I felt the wind first, then the silence. 1 second, I was standing beside my own nephew, looking at the ocean below. The next, his hand was on my back, not a shove, not an accident, a deliberate push. As my body tipped forward, the last thing I heard him say was, "You won't need the money anymore." And then the cliff disappeared beneath my feet. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Victor Langford. I'm 62 years old, and until recently, I believed family was the one thing money couldn't corrupt. I had just sold my tech company for $135 million and invited my nephew to Santorini to celebrate what I thought was a shared victory. What I didn't know was that he hadn't come to celebrate. He had come to make sure I didn't leave the island alive. People think selling a company changes you overnight. They imagine champagne, private jets, applause, but the truth is quieter. It feels like standing in an empty room after everyone leaves, the noise gone, the lights still on, and you suddenly wondering who stayed for you and who stayed for the promise of something else. I sold my tech company 3 weeks before Santorini. 30 years of my life compressed into one signature. The number $135 million didn't make me smile. It made me tired. I was 62, divorced, no children. My sister had died years earlier, leaving behind one son, my nephew, Ethan. I helped raise him after his mother passed, paid for his education, covered his first failed startup, introduced him to investors who wouldn't have taken his calls otherwise. To me, he wasn't family by blood alone. He was legacy. When the deal closed, Ethan was the first person I called. Laughed too loud, too fast, and said, "Uncle Vic, you finally did it." I told him I hadn't done anything yet, that I wanted to breathe. I wanted to feel normal again. That's when he suggested Santorini. "You always talked about it," he said. "The cliffs, the sunsets, the peace, you deserve it." Deserve. That word should have stopped me, but I agreed. Because after decades of boardrooms and deadlines, the idea of standing somewhere beautiful with the last piece of family I had felt right. The island was everything the photos promised. White buildings stacked like prayers against the cliffs. Blue water so still it looked painted. Wind that carried salt and warmth at the same time. Ethan arrived a day after me. He hugged me tightly at the airport, his hands gripping my shoulders longer than necessary. "You look good," he said. "Relaxed," I smiled. "You look hungry," I joked. He laughed, but his eyes didn't. The first few days were perfect on the surface. Wine at sunset, long dinners. Stories about the early days of the company, but something felt off. Ethan asked questions that didn't feel like curiosity. They felt like inventory. How much cash did you keep liquid? Did you structure the sale personally or through a trust? Any partners still involved? I brushed it off at first. Then the questions became sharper. Have you updated your will yet? Did the board require non-compete clauses? Is the money insured overseas? I finally laughed and said, "Relax." I didn't rob a bank, he smiled back, but again his eyes stayed cold. On the fourth night, we took a walk along the cliff path above the caldera. Tourists were thinning out. The sun dipped low, painting the sky orange and red. Ethan suggested we step off the main trail to get a better view. I hesitated. The edge was closer than I liked. No railing, loose gravel, but he insisted. "Just a few steps," he said. "I promise." I trusted him. That was my mistake. We stood there quietly, the wind pulling at our clothes. Far below, the water looked calm, inviting. Ethan leaned against a rock and sighed. "You know," he said, "people talk about legacy like it's buildings or names on plaques." I nodded. "I think it's who remembers you," I replied. He turned to me slowly. "And who benefits from you being remembered," he said. I frowned. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked, "Did you ever regret not having kids?" The question hit harder than I expected. "No," I said carefully. "I had the company, I had you." Silence. The wind grew louder. That's when he stepped closer. Too close. I felt his hand on my back. At first, I thought he was steadying me. Then I felt pressure, intentional, controlled. Time slowed into fragments. The sound of the ocean vanished. The sky tilted. My stomach dropped. I turned my head just enough to see his face. Calm, focused, not angry, resolved. "You won't need the money anymore," he said quietly. Then he pushed. The world flipped. Sky became stone. Stone became air. I remember thinking, so this is how it ends. Not in a hospital, not in a boardroom, but betrayed by the only family I had left. My body hit a ledge before the water. Pain exploded through my side. I screamed not from fear, but from disbelief. Above me, Ethan leaned over the edge, watching, not panicking, not calling for help, just watching. "You should have trusted me," he said. Then he stepped back and disappeared from view. I don't know how long I lay there. Seconds, minutes. Time doesn't behave normally when your body is broken. Blood soaked into my shirt. My phone, miraculously, was still in my pocket. With shaking hands, I unlocked it. No signal, of course. I pressed my face against the rock and tried not to slip further. Below me, the drop continued. One mistake, one shift, and I was gone. That's when I heard voices, tourists, laughing, footsteps. Summoning everything I had left, I screamed. Once, twice, then nothing. My throat burned. I waited and waited. Finally, a shadow appeared above. Not Ethan, a stranger, wide-eyed, terrified. He shouted something in Greek, more voices, hands reaching down. Someone grabbed my arm. As they pulled me up, the last thing I thought before blacking out was this: Ethan didn't check if I was dead. That means he thinks I am. I woke up to white light and beeping. At first, I thought I was still falling, that this was some strange continuation of the cliff, the sky bleaching out as I dropped. Then pain arrived, not all at once, not mercifully. It came in waves, sharp, crushing pulses through my ribs, my shoulder, my leg. I tried to move. A scream tore out of me instead. "Easy," a voice said. "Female, calm, you're safe, you're in the hospital." Hospital. The word anchored me. I forced my eyes open. White walls, IV lines. A nurse adjusting a monitor. "What happened?" I croaked. She looked at me carefully, like someone choosing words that might break. "You fell," she said. "From a cliff path near Oya. Tourists found you." I swallowed. "My nephew," I whispered. She cut me off gently. "The police were notified," she said. "They're asking questions, but right now you need to rest." Rest. The word made me want to laugh, because the moment she stepped out of the room, my mind started running. Ethan didn't slip. He didn't panic, he didn't call for help. He pushed me, and if he pushed me, it wasn't rage, it was calculation. 2 hours later, a police officer arrived, middle-aged, Greek accent softened by careful English. He introduced himself as Officer Nikos Papadakis and pulled a chair beside my bed. "We need to talk about the fall," he said. "I didn't fall," I replied immediately. His pen paused. I was pushed. He studied my face for a long moment. "By whom?" "My nephew," I said. "Ethan Langford," he nodded slowly. "You were traveling together." "Yes, and where is he now?" "I don't know," I said, "but he left me there." The officer scribbled something down. "There were no witnesses," he said carefully, "and your nephew has not reported you missing." "Of course he hasn't. He thinks I'm dead," I said quietly. Officer Papadakis looked up. "That's a serious claim." "So is attempted murder," I replied. Silence settled between us. Then he asked the question I feared. "Do you have proof?" I closed my eyes. No witnesses, no recording, no security cameras on that path, just my word against a man who on paper looked like a grieving nephew. "I don't," I admitted, "but he'll make a move, soon." The officer leaned back slightly. "What kind of move?" I met his eyes. "He'll try to control my assets." 3 days later, I was discharged, cracked ribs, dislocated shoulder, fractured leg, alive. Officially, my fall was an accident. Unofficially, I was a problem Ethan didn't expect to survive. The police assigned a plainclothes officer to check in on me daily, not protection, observation. I returned to my hotel under a different name, and that's when the messages started. The first email came from my bank. Urgent, account access attempt blocked timestamp, 2 hours after my fall. I stared at the screen. He didn't even wait. Then another email. Request to amend power of attorney, denied, and another. Trust modification attempt flagged. My hands trembled. Ethan had moved fast. He'd assumed I was dead, or at least incapacitated long enough to push paperwork through. But there was one problem. I'd built my company from nothing. I didn't leave my financial life unguarded. Every major change required my biometric confirmation or a direct call, with a passphrase only 2 people knew. Me. And my late wife. Ethan didn't know that. That night I couldn't sleep. Pain kept me awake, but fear kept me alert. I replayed the moment at the cliff over and over, the calm in his voice, the lack of hesitation. This wasn't spontaneous. It was rehearsed, which meant he'd planned it long before Santorini. The trip wasn't a celebration. It was a setup. I reached for my laptop and logged into a secure account I hadn't touched in years. My legacy file. A contingency plan my lawyers insisted on after my company reached its first billion-dollar valuation. At the time, I thought it was paranoid. Now, it felt prophetic. Inside were recorded statements, asset locks, and instructions triggered by one condition: if I am declared dead or missing under suspicious circumstances. I read the clause slowly. If activated, all controlling interest would be frozen for 90 days. No transfers, no inheritance, no access. And a sealed letter would be delivered to the person attempting the claim. I smiled for the first time since the fall. Ethan was about to receive a message he wouldn't expect. The next morning, my phone buzzed, an unfamiliar number. I answered. Uncle Vic, Ethan's voice, tight, controlled, relieved I didn't speak. He continued, I heard there was an accident. They said it was you. Still, I stayed silent. Then I said calmly, you pushed me. A pause, long enough to confirm everything. That's not funny, he said. It's not a joke, I replied. You left me there to die. His breath shifted. I don't know what you think happened, he said carefully, but you were near the edge. Stop, I said. Just stop. Silence. Then his tone changed, colder. You should have stayed dead, he muttered. There it was, the truth. I ended the call. 2 hours later, my lawyer called. Victor, she said urgently. Someone attempted to file an emergency death declaration on your behalf. I closed my eyes. How? Using a hospital contact in Greece, she continued. They claimed you passed from complications. And it failed, she said, because you're very much alive, I exhaled. But Victor, she added, this isn't over. If he's desperate enough to push you off a cliff, he's desperate enough to try something else. She was right. Ethan didn't need my money yet. He needed confirmation. He needed certainty, which meant he'd come back, to the hospital, to the hotel, to me. That night, as I sat in the dark room, curtains drawn, lights off, I heard a soft knock at the door, 3 slow taps, the kind meant to sound casual, friendly. I didn't move. Then a voice, low, familiar. Uncle Vic, Ethan said softly. It's me. My heart hammered. I reached for my phone and texted Officer Papadakis. He's here. The handle turned, the door opened, and Ethan stepped inside smiling, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't tried to murder me 4 days earlier. He closed the door behind him and locked it. Then he looked at me and said, You're making this very difficult. Door clicked shut behind him. That sound, soft, final, hit harder than the fall. Ethan stood between me and the exit, hands relaxed at his sides, that same polite smile on his face, the one he used in pitch meetings, the one that convinced investors he was harmless. You shouldn't be alone right now, he said calmly. You're injured. I didn't answer. My eyes stayed on the door handle, locked. You scared a lot of people, he continued. Making accusations like that, it's not healthy. I laughed. A dry, broken sound. You pushed me off a cliff. He sighed like I'd just disappointed him. I warned you, he said. You were leaning too far. You put your hand on my back. A pause, his smile thinned. You always did have a dramatic imagination, he said. I shifted slightly in the chair, my ribs screaming in protest. Why? I asked. Just tell me why. He walked closer, careful not to rush. Predators don't rush. You sold the company, he said. You cashed out. You were done. So you became a liability, he replied. An unpredictable one. I stared at him. I built that company, I said. I protected you. Yes, he nodded. And now you're old, public, emotional. Each word was deliberate. You could change your mind, he continued. You could donate it. You could give it to someone else. You could live another 20 years. My blood ran cold. You were planning this before Santorini. He didn't deny it. The trip was convenient, he said, remote. Tourists everywhere, accidents happen. I clenched my jaw. And if I died, he shrugged. I'd mourn, he said, publicly, tastefully. The room felt smaller. You didn't even check, I whispered. If I was dead. That was my mistake, he said. You always were stubborn. I reached for my phone. He noticed instantly. Careful, he warned. You don't want to make this worse. I looked up at him. It already is. I pressed a button. The speaker clicked on. Officer Papadakis' voice filled the room. Mr. Langford, we can hear everything. Ethan froze just for half a second, but it was enough. His eyes darted to the ceiling, the corners, the walls. You're recording me? He snapped. No, I said quietly. I'm being protected. The smile vanished. You think this saves you, he said sharply. You think a conversation proves anything? The door burst open. Two uniformed officers entered first, then Papadakis behind them. Ethan stepped back, hands raised slightly. Gentlemen, he said smoothly, this is a misunderstanding. Papadakis didn't respond. He looked at me instead. Are you all right, Mr. Langford? I nodded. Did he touch you? Yes. Ethan's jaw tightened. You can't arrest me, he said quickly. There's no evidence, Papadakis gestured. Your phone, he said. Ethan hesitated, then handed it over. Papadakis scrolled silently. Minutes passed, the room filled with tension. Finally, Papadakis looked up. You attempted to file a death declaration, he said. You contacted his banks, you accessed his trusts. Ethan laughed sharply. I was trying to protect his assets. And Papadakis continued. You searched cliff fatality statistics in Santorini 2 weeks before the trip. Silence. You booked the exact path, he added, the same one with no railing. Ethan's confidence cracked. That proves nothing, he said. Papadakis nodded, perhaps not alone. He turned to me. Mr. Langford, he said, would you like to show him? I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small drive. Ethan's eyes widened. No, he said quietly. You didn't. I did, I replied, years ago. I handed the drive to Papadakis. It contains a recorded contingency message, I said. Triggered if I'm declared dead or incapacitated. Papadakis plugged it into a tablet. The screen lit up. My face appeared, older, calmer, recorded months earlier. On screen me spoke. If you are watching this, it means someone tried to remove me to access my assets. If that person is my nephew, Ethan Langford, no, this was not an accident. Ethan lunged. The officers restrained him instantly. No, he shouted. You planned this. You planned against me. I planned to survive, I said. The recording continued. All financial control is frozen. All attempted changes are logged, and all evidence has been sent to legal authorities. Ethan struggled, panic replacing arrogance. You think money matters now? He snarled at me. You ruined everything. No, I said calmly. You did. Papadakis nodded to the officers. Take him. As they dragged Ethan toward the door, he twisted to look at me one last time. This isn't over, he hissed. You'll die alone. I met his eyes. I almost did, I said, and you showed me exactly who deserved to be. The door slammed shut. Silence returned. Papadakis exhaled. You were lucky, he said, very lucky. I leaned back exhausted. No, I replied. I was prepared. The room felt hollow after they took Ethan away, like a storm had passed and left everything standing but stripped of warmth. I sat there for a long time, staring at the door he'd walked through, trying to reconcile the boy I once held on my shoulders with the man who had tried to kill me. Officer Papadakis stayed. He didn't rush me, didn't fill the silence with questions. Eventually, he spoke. You know, he said quietly, most people don't survive betrayal like this. Not physically, not emotionally. I nodded. I didn't survive it, I said. I just woke up afterward. Ethan was charged with attempted murder, financial fraud, and conspiracy to falsify death records. The evidence stacked quickly. Flight records, search histories, bank logs, text messages he never thought anyone would read. The cliff push was no longer an accident. It was a plan, a bad one. The media found out within days. Headlines didn't call him my nephew. They called him heir who tried to kill his uncle. I refused interviews, not because I was ashamed, because I didn't want my life reduced to a headline. Recovery was slow. My body healed faster than my trust. Every time someone stood too close behind me, my muscles tensed. Every unexpected knock made my heart race. But there was one thing I did not feel anymore: guilt. I had spent years wondering if I failed Ethan, if I hadn't given enough, if I'd been too distant, too focused on work. Now I understood something painful but freeing. You can give someone everything and still not satisfy their hunger. 3 months later, I returned home. Same house, same silence, but it felt different, cleaner, like a space that finally belonged to me again. I made changes, small ones at first, new locks, new routines, new boundaries, then bigger ones. I rewrote my will, not out of fear, but clarity. I set up a foundation in my sister's name. Education grants, mental health support, programs for founders who lose themselves chasing success. I didn't want my money to reward entitlement. I wanted it to repair damage. One afternoon, I received a letter, no return address, just a name on the envelope. Ethan. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single page. No excuses, no apology, just one line. I thought if I had everything you built, I would finally feel like someone. I folded the letter slowly. For a moment, I considered responding. Then I realized something important. Closure does not always come from dialogue. Sometimes it comes from silence. I never wrote back. The final hearing happened 6 months later. I testified. I looked him in the eyes, not with anger, with finality. When the judge read the sentence, Ethan didn't look at me. He stared at the floor. He was sentenced to 18 years, enough time to sit with his choices. Enough time for me to live the rest of my life without looking over my shoulder. I returned to Santorini once more, not to the cliff, to the water. I stood barefoot at the edge of the shore, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The same colors, the same beauty, different meaning. A local man asked if I wanted my photo taken. I smiled and shook my head. No, I said. I'm just here to remember that I didn't fall. People ask me now if selling my company was worth it. I tell them this: money didn't change my life. Survival did. It showed me who stays, who watches, who waits for your shadow to disappear, and who is willing to push you into the dark to take what you built. But it also showed me something else. That even at 62, with broken bones and broken trust, you can still stand up, tell the truth, and choose what your legacy really is. I didn't leave Santorini rich. I left it awake. And that was worth more than $135 million.